What happens when a lone woman dares to save a blind wolf from gun-toting hunters? You won't believe how that desperate howl sparked a fight exposing deep-seated injustice and forced an entire community to choose sides. I never signed up to be the poster child for Tree Hugger of the Year, but there I was, kneeling in a muddy ravine, talking to a blind wolf as if he'd respond in perfect English. The morning fog clung to my curls, and the air smelled like wet pine needles and bad decisions. I'll be honest, I've had better ideas than wandering off the beaten trail with a fully loaded veterinary kit. But saving a dying animal has a way of clouding common sense. It started when I heard that desperate, off-key howl that sounded like a chorus of rusty car doors slamming. My gut told me something was terribly wrong, so I set off into the woods, cursing under my breath at every root and bramble. By the time I spotted him, the wolf was stumbling along this narrow, garbage-strewn path, his golden fur matted with blood and dirt, eyes milky and unseeing. He bumped into trees like a drunk guy at last call, and my heart clenched. I thought, great. Just another day of playing hero for a creature I can't even keep track of in my own basement. I eased down on my knees, covertly praying he wouldn't flinch and bite me. His ribs jutted out as if he'd been eating nothing but regret, and his legs trembled with each beat of his heart. "Hey, buddy," I murmured. "I'm not here to hurt you." He cocked his head as best as a blind wolf can, nostrils flaring. He could smell me, lucky for both of us. I pulled out a chunk of stale bread left over from my lunch and placed it gently on a rock. It took him 3 tries to find it, but when he finally did, his body shuddered, and he tucked into it like his life depended on that meager scrap. Hell, it probably did. As I knelt there bandaging his shredded paw, a rustle behind me made me freeze. I didn't need a sixth sense to guess what was coming. It smelled like gunpowder and narrow-mindedness. 3 men in camouflage stomped into view, 2 of them grinning like they'd just found out the world owed them something, and the third clutching a rifle like it was a winning lottery ticket. The one at the front, Derek, I'd heard his name whispered among the locals, looked me up and down, lips twisting into a smirk. "What the hell are you doing, princess?" Feeding a wolf is a fast track to being its dinner. Usually, I'd have a sarcastic retort ready, something about wise-ass hunters versus naive city gals. But between the wolf's pitiful whimpers and the cold barrel of that rifle, I felt my sarcasm get snatched right from under me. So I settled for a tight-lipped glare. "I'm keeping him alive," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "He's blind, can't hunt. He's not a threat." Derek let out a laugh like I'd told him the joke of the century. "Blind? You're a bum too, calling that dog a wolf. Let me guess, you'll send him off to some fancy rehab camp and we'll never see him again. Well, sorry to break it to you, but wolves don't fit in with sidewalk cafes and spa retreats." My pulse spiked, blood roaring in my ears. I wrapped the last bandage around the wolf's leg, each twist a defiant statement. "I don't give a damn what you think." I glanced at the rusted trap nearby, its jaws still stained with old blood. Whoever said it didn't give a damn either. I wanted to kick it into next week. "You've got 2 seconds to back off," I said, voice low enough that the wolf didn't panic again. "Or I call the damn forest patrol." I felt ridiculous, me with no backup, telephoning an office that probably thinks wolf rescue is a part-time hobby for hippies. Derek squinted at me, his buddies snickering behind him. "You don't scare me, sweetheart. Nobody's coming." He took a step forward. 2 more and that rifle could be aimed at my head. A bead of sweat trickled down my spine as I held my ground, leaning over the wolf protectively. In that moment, something in me snapped. I wasn't just some sap with a soft spot for critters. I was a grown woman who'd seen enough injustice to last 2 lifetimes. My gut burned with disgust. These guys thought a blind animal was disposable because it didn't fit into their little slice of paradise. I sighed and flicked my head toward the tree line. Fine, keep talking. Maybe the bears will invite you to dinner, but get off my path. I scooped the last of my medical supplies into my backpack, hoping like hell the wolf didn't need more than what I could carry. As I turned to leave, one of the hunters, some knucklehead named Todd, called out, "Don't think this is over, girlie. That creature's trouble, and you're just asking for it." They melted back into the trees, leaving me with the wolf's ragged breathing and the echo of their laughter. I exhaled, feeling the weight of adrenaline still pulsing through my veins. I repositioned the wolf into a makeshift sling I fashioned from my jacket. No way I was letting him face the world alone. As I hoisted him onto my shoulder, his fur matted against my skin, I whispered, "Hang in there, pal." Behind me, the forest seemed to grow darker, the trees leaning in like silent spectators. I knew I had just signed myself up for a battleground far bigger than a muddy ravine. If turning my back on these hunters left me shivering with anxiety, then I might as well admit I was damn terrified. Yet somehow, I felt more alive than ever, like I'd found a cause worth losing sleep over. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how it unfolded. I swore I'd never trust a muddy back road again, but here I was, bumping along in my old pickup, the blind wolf slumped across the passenger seat like a heavy sack of potatoes. The sky's mood matched mine, gunmetal clouds gathering overhead, promising more trouble than a spilled bag of groceries. I glanced at my rearview mirror, empty forest, save for a couple of deer eyeing me from the trees. Maybe they were judging me for playing rescuer instead of minding my own business. By the time I reached the turnoff for Mountain Haven Wildlife Center, the rain began drumming on the windshield so hard I thought the glass might crack. I wrestled the wolf out of the truck, his ribs still visible through torn fur, and trudged toward the gate, where a half-broken sign read, "Welcome to MHWC, where miracles happen unless you're a fool." My boots squelched in the mud as I carried him under a ramshackle porch, water dripping from my hair in cold, relentless rivulets. Inside, the center was chaos incarnate, volunteers dashing around like caffeinated squirrels, smell of antiseptic trying, and failing, to mask damp fur and fear. I dropped the wolf on a pile of straw. He whimpered and settled his head against the cool floor. A tall guy named Lewis, always the reliable one, appeared clutching a thermos of greenish liquid he insisted was supposed to help. He squinted at the wolf's wounds, muttering under his breath, "Just peachy. This storm's got us cooking by candlelight if the generator craps out." I offered to hold the wolf's head so he wouldn't spasm during treatment, but Lewis shot me a look that said, "I've seen your rookie moves." Still, he handed me a pair of stir-crazy lab gloves and started cleaning wounds one by one. I winced as he poured antiseptic, but not a single cuss left my mouth. Had to keep it classy for the audience, right? Before I could second-guess myself, Lewis's radio crackled. "All units, suspect heading north on Pine Trail, 3 men with rifles." My heart sank. Derek and his goons were on the move again. I glanced at the wolf. His breathing was slow, but his midsection twitched. He trusted me enough to let me near him. I couldn't let some cowboy with a permit turn him into a fancy rug. Outside, thunder roared like the world was yelling at me, and the gate rattled as a familiar boot slammed against it. I grabbed a flashbang lamp, aimed it out the window, and flipped off the lights. In the pitch dark, I felt their eyes narrowing on the building. "You've got 2 seconds to toss that animal out," called a voice that stank of entitlement. I took a deep breath, let the sarcasm lubricate my words. "Sure, and after you're done hoisting your trophies, maybe you'll come back for my blood pressure med." Real smart plan, fellas. No response but muffled laughter and the muffled click of a lock sliding. My pulse ratcheted up. If they broke in, not only would they take the wolf, they might demolish the place we'd built to protect creatures like him. I bolted to the front door, but Lewis grabbed my arm. Hold up. You go out there alone. You're asking to be shot by amateurs. He pointed to a back entrance leading into the vet wing. Let me handle the front. I hesitated. My stubborn pride flared, but I recognized the wisdom in his words. I slipped down a corridor lit by flickering fluorescents, flooded with the smell of rubber gloves and disinfectant. Each step echoed my own dread. If Derek got in, he'd tear this sanctuary apart like a bull in a china shop. Suddenly, a deafening crash. The front windows snapped in. Shards rained down onto the tile floor, and voices surged forward as if they were beasts scenting fresh blood. My skin crawled. I sprinted down the hall, lungs burning, and swung open the door to the outdoor pen. Rain assaulted my face, and there, standing like jackals, were Derek, Todd, and some third schmuck I didn't catch the name of. They aimed at the pen where juvenile owls were huddled in a makeshift aviary and sick raccoons whined in cages. Derek sneered at me, brow low. Hand over the wolf, or you're next. His friends snickered, eager to prove themselves. The pen was no place for a firefight, and the vet wing's only exit was flooded. A vilamsa pas tortia eget, megvila gitva smug arkukat. I swallowed my dread and let the sarcasm flow. Look, if you're here for pets, I've got a zebra eating my lunch tomorrow. But the wolf? He's off limits. My voice sounded small against the storm. Todd stepped forward, pressing his face into the cold air. We don't negotiate, sweetheart. Either hand him over or we teach you a lesson. His sweetheart rankled like a tight shoe. At that moment, I noticed something unexpected. The volunteers, 6 rough, rain-drenched souls, emerging from the shadows. They formed a ragtag line behind me, wielding whatever they could find. Pitchforks, wrenches, even a shovel. One of them, a burly ex-firefighter named Marge, cracked her knuckles and gave me a crooked grin. You boys picked the wrong shelter to raid. Derek's eyes shifted between Marge and me. His arrogance wavered for a fraction of a second before he forced a laugh. You think your ragtag circus can stop us? I stepped forward, the adrenaline hammering in my temples. It's not a circus, and those ragtag folks are the only reason you're still breathing. My chest tightened. Anger, fear, righteous indignation, mixing into a combustible cocktail. Rain pounded so hard it blurred the scene, but I could see their resolve faltering. Just as I opened my mouth to deliver some final blow of truth, a high-pitched whistle cut through the chaos. I turned. The wolf, pushed by some stubborn instinct, had staggered to his feet and crossed to the nearest fence. He lifted his muzzle, let out a single, raspy howl that cracked the tension like a whip. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then Todd dropped his rifle, scrambling back as if the wolf's roar had set his pants on fire. Derek cursed under his breath, but his courage melted. With one last glare at me, he gave the order, "Move it!" They bolted into the storm, rifles abandoned in the mud. My volunteers let out simultaneous cheers, but I didn't breathe easy yet. I watched those 3 assholes disappear into the trees, their silhouettes swallowed by rain. I turned to the wolf, eyes still milky, but now burning with a fire I hadn't seen before. He limped over, tail low, and pressed his head against my shin as if to say, "Thanks, boss." The weight of his trust felt like an anchor and a gift. I ruffled the fur atop his head, choking back tears I refused to shed in front of volunteers. Lewis jogged up, soaking wet, and wrapped a flannel around my shoulders. He tossed a look at the still snarling volunteers. Heard that howl all the way in the vet wing. Pretty boss move. I cracked a grin that probably looked more like a grimace. Yeah, boss move in a failing doghouse scenario, but at least we're still standing. I exhaled, watching the wolf's chest rise and fall. Lightning split the sky again, and thunder rolled as if applauding our victory. But I knew this was no time to pat myself on the back. The system that let Derek roam free was deeper than any trespassing hunters. It was built on fear, ignorance, and arrogance. And that storm beyond the trees, it wasn't just rain, it was a warning that the real battle was about to begin. This is the climax, everything you've been waiting for, right here. Stay tuned to see how I put everyone in their place. When dawn finally broke, I felt like an overcooked turkey, ragged, sore, but still somehow standing. The storm had ripped through the night, leaving branches strewn like discarded umbrellas and turning every path into a muddy slip and slide. I didn't care. My focus was on that wolf, my unlikely partner in this wreckage. I slipped into the pen just as he rose from the straw, ears flicking at every distant rustle. His breathing was steadier now, and though his eyes remained opaque, I swear I glimpsed recognition in his stance. He limped over, caught my gaze, and gave a soft whine, as if reminding me, "We're still here." God, that sound pulled every string inside me. Before I could celebrate, I heard the roar of an engine. A battered news van screeched to a stop outside the gate, reporters spilling out like the paparazzi on a Hollywood scandal. Apparently, last night's showdown made the evening bulletin. I sighed, nothing like national attention to stir both hope and headaches. I hustled the wolf into a shelter stall and slung a tarp around him. The cameras were already rolling when I emerged, hair plastered to my face, clothes soaked through. A reporter thrust a microphone. "Emily, can you describe what happened last night?" Viewers want the unfiltered story. Unfiltered? I quirked an eyebrow. All right, picture three jacked up cowboys, dripping with entitlement, showing up in a wildlife sanctuary, rifles aimed at a blind wolf. And me, I was the only person in sight foolish enough to step between them and Mr. Harry here. I patted the wolf's head gently. They vanished into the storm after he reminded them who's boss. Flashbulbs popped, and another reporter, a young woman with too much blush and too little empathy, pressed, "Wasn't that dangerous? Aren't wolves?" I cut her off. I grew up around these woods. I know wolves better than most of your viewers know their own neighbors. He's no mindless killer. He's hurt, scared, and trusting a stranger to help him. That tells you everything you need to know. The cameras turned toward the wolf, but he blinked slowly, eyes half closed. A chill ran down my spine. This animal, once a symbol of everything hunters claimed to fear, had become a living rebuke to their ignorance. After the cameras left, the center buzzed like a beehive. Volunteers scrubbed pens, restocked supplies, and whispered rumors. I heard a local farm offered to donate feed if the wolf stayed. Word is, the county commissioners are calling a meeting tomorrow. Everyone suddenly acted like a swarm with a mission. I found Lewis inspecting the wolf's bandages. He looked up, face hacked by exhaustion. "You okay?" I shrugged, then smirked. If by okay you mean I'm electrified with the prospect of being in every headline for the next week, then yeah, peachy. I ruffled his hair and he rolled his eyes. But reality hammered me. This wasn't just about one wolf anymore. It had become a referendum on how people here viewed wild creatures. If I'd thought last night was intense, sunrise had brewed something even hotter. By mid-morning, a crowd had formed outside the center's gates. Farmers, activists, curious neighbors, and those three hapless hunters sitting in a pickup, faces sullen, hats pulled low. I felt a surge of defiance. With the gate locked behind me, I strode to the center's front porch and addressed the assembled. Look around, I began, voice echoing louder than I planned. This wolf didn't choose to be blind. He didn't choose pain or traps or fear. We did that. Humanity did. Now he's here, showing us how to survive. If you think he's a threat, you're forgetting who truly belongs here. The ones with respect for life. The crowd went silent for a heartbeat. Then murmurs spread like wildfire. One of the farmers, a grizzled guy named Tom, yes, the same Tom who'd called me girly last year, stepped forward. You've got guts, kid, he said. Maybe I was wrong. My sheep haven't crossed his path yet. A few chuckles rippled through the spectators. I locked eyes with Derek and his friends. They shifted uneasily under the weight of public scrutiny. They had no words, only that guilty shuffle when the spotlight lands on someone who knows they've messed up. Later, as the crowd dispersed, a local commissioner approached me with a folder. County meetings tomorrow afternoon. We need to decide if MHWC gets funding to expand, hire more rangers, and create an educational program on coexistence. He smiled, thin-lipped. I trust you'll present the case. I nodded, stomach flickering like a busted light. Presenting to a room full of bureaucrats? That was a new level of terror. But if I hesitated, this chance to reshape attitudes might slip away. That evening, as the wolf ate next to me, I scratched his mangy ears. He chomped on the meat, tail thumping the ground in a sluggish rhythm. Under the golden glow of the oil lamp, I whispered, "Tomorrow, we see if the system can change." He looked at me, head tilted, as if replying, "I'll follow you anywhere." In that moment, I realized this wasn't just my fight, it was ours. I'd gone into these woods to save a single wolf. Instead, I found a way to save a whole community from its own short-sightedness. Now, with the county meeting looming, I can only hope that this ragtag sanctuary, filled with volunteers, wounded animals, and stubborn defenders, will stand as proof that empathy can outshine fear. And if it doesn't, well, at least I'll know I tried, and I'll still have a blind wolf who believes in me. That's worth more than any headline.